We continue with Newzroom Afrika's Linda Mnisi, who's joining us live in studio as Catholics continue to pay tribute to the late Pope Francis. Linda, very good afternoon to you. Very somber Easter Monday, especially for Catholics across the country and across the globe. You've been out in the streets. What are some of the reactions that you've gotten from followers?
Well, Katlego, mostly it's been a shock, right? A lot of people did not expect that they would wake up to the news that Pope Francis has passed away, especially after seeing him yesterday, right, on television, and after those updates on his health, which seemingly indicated that he was getting better. And that offered a glimmer of hope for Catholics who were, of course, very worried about the Pope's health. You'd recall that we come from a time of uncertainty when, people did not know exactly how this was going to end. It was not the first time that the Pope had been hospitalized, but this one was one of those that left the Catholic world really in uncertain terrain, right? So a lot of people really were shocked that now he's since passed. But of course, it is an opportunity for people to reflect on the legacy, yes. And a lot of people speaking about how he always tried to come to grassroots level and meet people where they are. And basically his different papacy style that a lot of people say they could relate to. He was one with the people. He's dubbed the Pope of the peripheries, really, because he meets people where they are. I spoke to a coordinator at the cathedral, and he said that's where the center of the church is, and he understood that the center of the church was in the peripheries where, you find minority groups, those who are not cared for, migrants, women, the LGBTI community there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you also remind me of a quote that one of our guests earlier said that the Pope had often used, saying that the shepherd needs to smell like the sheep. So you need to be one with those that are marginalized. So administratively then, Linda, what happens going forward? What are we going to see within the South African Roman Catholic Church? And what are we going to see globally with all the events and proceedings that are going to happen in the next couple of days?
All right, locally there's still discussions around what needs to happen because you would have heard earlier on the Cardinal, the Archbishop of Johannesburg, indicating earlier to our colleague Michelle that he will be traveling to Rome in a couple of days, but there are, talks to have Mass for the Pope, but of course those events will be communicated in the next day or so because, of course, of the time frame and how, all of them needs to be led by the Cardinal. But internationally, as you would have seen, the Vatican announcing earlier on that they'll be having one of those ceremonies, one of the first ceremonies, that takes place usually after the Pope has passed, and that surrounds the certification of the passing of the Pope. So what usually happens is that his name will be called 3 times, and if he does not respond, then it indicates that he has indeed passed. That will be led by a cardinal who, is in charge of that particular ceremony, and he'll basically be amongst other cardinals as well as some of the family members. The Pope is going to be dressed in red. His body will then be taken into a wooden casket with a silver lining. Important, Katlego, to note that the Pope somewhat changed some of the traditions that were performed in the Catholic Church. So his body will then be placed in a coffin. Another important element of this ceremony that we're going to be seeing is the sealing of the apartment where he lived. They're going to be sealing that because, of course, he was the head of the church. Some of the documents will still be in his apartment. So to prevent things like, forgery and things like that. So they'll be sealing his apartment before, of course, the mourning period begins. His body will then be moved, at a date that is yet to be announced, will be moved to the St. Peter's Basilica. That's where the viewing of the body will be. Interesting that he chose that his body should be viewed from inside the casket, inside that wooden coffin, as opposed to other popes who we've seen being viewed without being in the casket, essentially. So he's chosen that. But also what's going to be interesting is seeing that he will not be buried where other popes are buried at the St. Peter's Basilica. He will be buried at the St. Mary's. And that's a very significant place because that's where he usually went to pray when he left the country. And when he left, the country and going to other African countries or whenever he embarked on a pilgrimage or any trip, really, he'd start there, pray, and even when he returns, he would still, go there. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days. From then on, that's when we're going to see the conclave, the election of his successor.
It's going to be a very interesting time. I mean, the very first non-European pontiff in nearly 1,300 years, and all these changes that you speak of, Linda Mnisi, it's going to be quite interesting to witness. Thank you so much for your time and joining us and giving us that update this afternoon. Well, your headlines are coming up. Do stay with us.